Hello, welcome back to another episode of It's Too Late for Me to Be Singing. Crazy Stupid Podcast. We're recording late on a weekday because we just came back from watching Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I do feel like we should decide right now, is this going to be a no spoilers review?
No. I won't be able to do that. So I'll just let people know.
Spoilers.
Yeah, in the caption, I'll probably say spoilers.
And you're hearing it right now. Don't listen to this episode. You've been warned. I have to confess, I like the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. I've never been like Guardians of the Galaxy. Like I've never, like
Really?
No, never. I didn't want to say that out loud because I know that they're like universally loved.
Yeah.
And I do like them. But like I was never like, oh my gosh. But this movie I feel like made me appreciate the characters a lot more than I have in the past.
I loved it. I've always loved Guardians of the Galaxy's movies because it's got that James Gunn touch to it, and it has humor like all the MCU films, but it has a very unique kind of James Gunn kind of humor where if you like it, you're going to just always love his movies. If you don't like it, you're not going to connect well with it. I've just accepted that for the people that say that they don't like Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm like, you just don't like the directing style of James Gunn, which is fine. It does it for me though. 100%. Yeah, he makes his characters feel so human. Like, why am I connecting with the raccoon?
Listen.
Why? How does he do it?
I was emotional.
How does he do it? Why am I crying for a raccoon? You know what I mean? For a tree. for an alien. For a half robot. I don't even know. I guess she's more like a cyborg at this point. But I'm so impressed. I'm impressed, James Gunn. I gotta tip my hat to him.
It was a nice send-off. Or what I thought was a send-off. But now it's like, is it a send-off?
I think it's a send-off to his story.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
But it also seems like Mantis is done. It seems like
what we saw with Rocket is what we'll probably see in the next, whenever the next Guardians movie comes.
And Star-Lord, they said, will also return.
But I don't think he's going to come back as a Guardian.
Dang, so Chris Pratt's this guy. Oh wow! Okay.
I think he'll probably come back in like a Secret War kind of a thing.
Oh, okay. For some reason when they said Star-Lord will return, I assumed that meant like he's going to return as like the star of a film, like the main character.
No, I didn't see it like that.
Because it's kind of like, why would you announce it? I guess because it's like
I
just assume everybody's going to return in those big.
No, yeah, in those big moments. But for him specifically, this felt like closure with his story, though.
Yeah, me too. That's why the announcement kind of like confused me.
Because I think the return is you'll still see him, but I don't know. That return, I don't think always means he's going to be in his own movie. I guess it sounds like we both loved it.
Yes.
For sure. You said you had a lot of stuff to say.
Yes. Okay. Because this is what I realized. You like what you were saying with how, like how are we feeling these such strong emotions for these characters that are like not even human and like really falling in love with the characters in this film. I realized, and maybe everybody else has already realized this, but I feel like the Guardians are a very unique type of superhero because it's like an outsider story. And that you think it's common in superhero stories because it's like you have powers, you're living this life that nobody else is living. But it's not. Iron Man, he's like a millionaire. He's like the center of society. Mm-hmm. Okay. Captain America is like America's guy. Everybody loves Captain America. Even Spider-Man is like, New York's local hero, like, and all of them sort of have like their place, their niche, their space where they belong. And I realized watching this Guardians film in particular that the Guardians of the Galaxy are all like, they're outcasts, they're outsiders, they're people without a home, without a place. And I feel like that's such a powerful story to tell about superheroes, because you just think about like, I don't know, just all the ostracized kids in the world, like particularly in high school, but even beyond that. And like having this story about all of these people that were like alone in the I was about to say in the world, but in the universe, like separated from their families, feeling lost, feeling like they don't have a home and a place, and then they find this chosen family. And in this film in particular, they find this chosen family, and all of the things that made them feel alone and ostracized become what makes them valuable to this team and this group of people, and they're able to like find peace and solace. It's like they found each other, they were able to care for each other and give each other this family when they needed it. And then by the end of the film, they can all say, I accept myself for who I am, and
Yeah.
I'm ready now to go on and handle my story and and whatever brought me here. And I just think that's really good.
I mean, you touched on something with that's really stuck with me. The idea of, adolescents and young adults who sort of feel ostracized, they're going around and let me rephrase that. I feel like the galaxy and how big it is and how empty it can feel and how alone it can make all of these singular beings feel, I feel like is James Gunn's metaphor for how like a lot of young people kind of experience life, because it can feel very empty sometimes, right? And I think the reason why the Guardians have a special connection with so many people is that for some of the other Marvel heroes, they're not perfect, but their outward appearance is perfect.
Yeah, you're meant to aspire to like want to be them.
I mean, look
yes,
at Steve.
They're meant to
You
be
know what
like
I mean?
the finest specimen.
Yeah, right. Like how Ant-Man used to talk about Captain America. Like, oh my gosh, he's
Yeah.
talking in Civil War. I mean, same thing with Iron Man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, guys love him, women love him. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody kind of loves that. And you saw it with Hulk in Endgame. Everybody loved him, right? He's like a content creator celebrity now.
Mm-hmm.
Rocket's never going to get that life.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Drax is never going to get that life. Even Gamora and Nebula, based on their reputation alone, I don't think they're ever going to get that life either. And I think that's what makes that connection with them to like a lot of younger and young adults is that I relate to it more.
Yeah. I think it's just like they're just so imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't have charisma. They don't have charm. They're weird looking.
They're very chaotic.
They're very chaotic.
Oh my God. Middle of a fight and they start arguing.
But like they act like a family for real. Like I was thinking about that a lot in this film, the way that they bicker, the way that they get at each other, but like only they can do that with each other, and the second anybody else, like they really are each other's chosen family.
Yeah.
And that's like, I mean, that's a real experience. Like there's a lot of people out there that for whatever reason are not able to find solace in the families that they were born into. And so they have to go out, and you feel ostracized and you feel alone, and you hope that one day you find a chosen family that will make you feel at home again.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. I love what James Gunn has done with Rocket's character in the 3 movies, because that's the cat food. Because looking back over those first 2, man, he's such a central purpose. Like he plays such a central purpose to the overall narrative. Because I think everything that we sort of talked about with, them being outcast and being ostracized, I feel like Rocket embodies that the most out of all of the Guardians of the Galaxy, especially with the backstory that you get in this movie. Mm-hmm. You initially get the hints of it in the first film. In the second film, he starts to warm up to them a little bit, and then you see it a lot more in Infinity War. and then he loses everyone. And I think in this film, this is,
Oh, he's the only one that didn't disappear.
well, I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
But it shows like his journey in forgiving himself and accepting that like he is deserving of people to love him was such a healing story to see. The second thing that I will say is watching this third movie made me love the relationship between Rocket and Nebula because they both, in some ways, share similar experiences. They are both experimented on from people who they initially trusted and were essentially betrayed. The second thing is in Infinity War, they were the only Guardians to survive.
Okay, that's right. She was there too.
Right. So they went through a bit of a traumatic experience and they bonded very much together. And you can see hints of that in this film where like he's making her, new equipment and new armor and new things to use and to fight with. They're both like super intelligent, so they definitely bonded over that. And you can get a sense that to an extent she's very protective of him also throughout this movie as well. Yeah, and I think it's those little moments of continuity that make me believe the family dynamic. Because yeah, they just went through something through the Infinity Saga. Of course it's going to bring them closer together. So I just got to commend James Gunn in helping that like it formulated how the dynamic was supposed to look like, because if you're going to find people who were going to get close, it would have to be those two. So I really appreciate what they did with that, because that was super impressive. Yeah.
That the telling of that backstory was very well done. I didn't expect to be that emotional. But man, that was good.
Yeah.
That was good. It felt like a real tragedy. And sometimes Marvel movies have a tough time with that. Sad things in Marvel movies do not always feel sad.
Feels a little hollow sometimes.
Yeah. I think like obviously Wakanda Forever landed it, but that was also because it was like a real life tragedy. But this definitely, they did a phenomenal job. Like I was there like, girl, you are not about to cry at this doggone Guardians of the Galaxy movie. But they really did a good job of like humanizing Rocket and all of the creatures that were in that. Also, the fact that this movie, okay, like while we're talking about the Guardians being imperfect and how they're outsiders and they're outcasts and how that's like the heart of their story, the fact that this movie's villain was somebody who was, his sole purpose was to strive for perfection is so good. It just brings it all home. It just brings it all home. It lands it so well, because that's their whole thing, is that they have found the beauty and the purpose in all of their flaws, and they've been able to love each other for them.
Yeah.
And here is a person who I would be so interested to know his backstory, who can't do that. Like he can't accept that. And so he's he's depriving himself and everybody around him of that love and connection because he's so hyper focused on perfection.
Yeah. But what's also interesting is that I can't always tell if it is his desire for wanting everyone to be perfect, or if he just doesn't like the idea of observing someone that is imperfect. Like, I think that drives him more than for like some sort of flawed righteous cause. Because when we get a glimpse of this alternate Earth, there's still problems that are happening, and like he wants to restart it over again, but it just kind of felt like, is that like there, I think when Rocket kind of says like he didn't really want things to be perfect, he just didn't like the way that things were. I it, I'm still trying to gather my thoughts on it, but it's almost like, I don't know. I have to maybe come back to it, but I think there's something there that I think James Gunn was trying to tell us about, like, he's a fixer, but his motives are more about whatever projecting he's placing onto someone like Rocket than it is about him wanting to make everything better.
I feel like, to me, it seems like when he is able to find perfection or create perfection, he will feel like he's perfected himself. I feel like that was, he's definitely, there definitely was nothing altruistic about his motivations, right? Like, you can't, there's no angle. Like, people try to make, say that about Thanos, like no, there's nothing there for him. He's not doing this for other people at all. Oops. But I do think he is trying to get to perfection, but I think it's about what it says about him, because that's why he got so upset when Rocket was able to see that flaw in his design,
And
that he couldn't see it.
He like obsessed over it.
He obsessed over it, and he said to him, he was like, I created you. So how is it possible that I'm responsible for you even being in existence, and you could see something that I couldn't?
Yeah.
I think it's more to do with like I think his pursuit of perfection is an attempt to perfect himself. And I think maybe there's like in the comics, there's like some backstory for him, but I'm sure that if it exists, it has something to do with his own history and his own past, and maybe whatever happened to his face.
Rocket did that.
Oh,
Yeah,
no, but he
remember?
wasn't wearing that. Oh, so in the flashbacks, that skin
No.
wasn't stretched like that?
He had his regular face, had regular hair and everything.
Oh, I don't
but
remember.
it was what
I
Rocket
was
did with that face.
not aware of that. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I had a couple of other notes down. It definitely had the James Gunn humor, but they handled some dark themes in this movie.
For sure.
The tone in certain moments were pretty dark, and I hope that Marvel continues to look at the ones that have landed well in the last two phases, because it's the ones where you don't have to go full on Netflix Daredevil, but you can still implement some elements of maturity and still have your Marvel feel. Because it kind of sometimes it feels like they're reluctant to really, go all in.
Yeah.
I think back to like what the creators of The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra did. They understood that the bulk of their audience, they grew with the show. And so Legend of Korra got a little bit more mature. Not too much where it was something that younger audiences couldn't relate to, but enough where it could still be applicable for the new fans and the ones that were with you throughout the journey so far. I think that is the bread and butter for Marvel. You have to find a better balance of implementing not just mature ideas, because what was talked about in Miss Marvel was a serious idea about her culture and the history behind it, but the way that they presented it was a lot softer. And so, it won't always connect with everyone, but I think you get the right director, you can do it.
Yeah, you have to have just multiple layers to the story.
It can't be that surface level.
Yeah, they all have to be operating at the same time, because it's like a kid could definitely go watch this movie, and to them it'll just be a story about a bunch of friends saving their raccoon.
Right.
Right. And it operates just fine at that level. Like, it's a fun story. They'll have a good time. They'll be invested. They'll be worried for Rocket. But then, the older that the viewer is, the more tapped in they'll be to the other layers of the story about trauma, about belonging, about family and friendship and love and sacrifice, and
Yeah. You said something that sort of reminded me of, how like in Lost, where they just sort of all coincidentally, quote unquote, because not really, there's people sort of pulling the strings. Spoiler alert, I don't care. It's been like 25 years. But
25.
Yeah, it came out in like 2000. maybe not 20, maybe more like 20 years, because I think it came out in 2004.
Okay, keep going.
But anyways, what everyone needed to heal in their own individual personal lives, they were able to find with the people on that island. That's where like their true healing came from. And like you see that in this movie. All of the characters in the Guardians of the Galaxy were either they started their journey off in projecting their insecurities onto their other friends, and they eventually come to the realization of what they need to heal, and they get that from being with this chosen family. So you have Nebula, where she's sort of constantly pinpointing everyone else's flaws because she's insecure about who she has become due to her father, Thanos. You've got Quill, who he's jumping from woman to woman. And when it came to Nebula, he's having a hard time letting go. He's clearly got, or excuse me, when it came to Gamora, he has a hard time letting go. And he clearly has, some abandonment issues and unresolved trauma that he has with his mom, right? And he sort of projects that out with consistently trying to find validation with shallow relationships with women outside of Gamora, which is why it was so hard for him to actually like move on from her. You've got Rocket, who he doesn't really want to allow himself to get closer to his friends because of the guilt he had with what happened in this movie. You see these themes show up over and over and over again. And yeah, they go on a lot of adventures, but I think the real purpose of this group was to allow all of them collectively and individually to heal. And now that that has happened, they are okay in going in their separate ways, because the purpose of this trilogy was to see how community and family is needed for individuals to heal from their own trauma. Like that, I think, is such a powerful lesson. And that sort of layeredness is what was missing from Ant-Man, because that family dynamic, I didn't feel anything. You know what I mean?
Nothing at all.
And so like, that's where you can tell the difference between when a character, or excuse me, when a director has a character and they give them like so many layers. And so every scene, you're thinking about all of those layers and the complexities that are interacting with each other. That's what just makes a good story. And James Gunn is just so good at that. So good at that.
It was phenomenal. It was truly phenomenal. I gotta talk just that little moment right at the end where he saw the little baby raccoons in the little cage.
Mm-hmm.
It was just so good. It felt like healing his inner child, like being the not the person, being the animal that he needed. But also, I feel like they use that to like sort of double tap on this idea of like your value not being like the value of all people, regardless of how different you are, regardless of how much of an outsider you still have value. Because the Guardians were about to leave. They were about to take the kids and go. And he was like, no, like these animals here, like that's who I am. Like that's who I was. And they have value too. And they deserve to be rescued from this horrible fate too.
And if you can see the value in me, then they also deserve that same chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was a necessary addition right at the end.
Oof. I see this, and it is hard to not. I think with Rocket's story, it feels like a very strong parallel to, in my opinion, like when I think of like the least of these, oftentimes I think about how people associate that with like the disabled community. And mental health can sort of be seen as a super inconvenience because there's a lot of emotional bandwidth you have to have for someone who's in your care that has, mental health concerns. just disabilities in general, the amount of accessibility that you have to put in for a lot of people, that's like super inconvenient. You don't want to have to deal with all of that. And it can feel like you're just kind of like, if they can just go over there, out of sight, out of mind, I would prefer that. Even if they don't say it out loud, there can sometimes be that sort of subtle desire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And to see like everything that like Rocket went through, it's hard to not see that as like a, listen, man, it may feel inconvenient, but like they're still human. And
Like they were human.
but you know,
Yeah. Like
metaphorically speaking,
their life has value, like regardless.
right?
Yeah.
Their life has value regardless of how in particular moments it can feel inconvenient to give them everything they need. I thought that was a pretty powerful message. Yeah. It's a good movie. Great movie.
Also, man, they managed to wrap it up happily, and I feel like they didn't have to like dumb down the villain's powers. Like when they defeated
When they
him,
scaled it, yeah, it didn't.
like when they defeated him and everybody was, on him at one time, that felt believable to me. And I liked that Gamora was the one to take the final. It's like solidified her. I actually have a couple of thoughts. I really like what they did with Gamora.
Me too. But I'll let you go. I just kind of talked a lot.
For her to be the person, spoiler alert, for her to be the person to deal the final blow to, what's the villain's name?
The Black Man. That's what his name is to me. The Black Man.
No, but what's his real?
I don't know. We'll find out.
The
Indomitable Bride.
The great.
I'm kidding. It's a Sherlock reference.
I feel like he should be right there at the top.
High Evolutionary.
The High Evolutionary. I was going to say the Grand Inquisitor. What is that? That's something else.
Grand Inquisitor? Star Wars.
Oh.
Okay.
But for her to be the one to deal the final blow to the High Evolutionary, I feel like was a really good way to sort of show us her acceptance of this family. I feel like she had sort of been pushing it away because she was like, I am not this person that you guys have all become so attached to. And I feel like her involvement and her being the one to sort of end this sort of shows like, I accept how important I am to you all, even if I don't know you.
Yeah.
And I accept that like you cared for a past version of me, even if I did not know who that person, and like that has value and worth. But I appreciate that they did that and they acknowledged that without trying to undo her story and just have her jump right back in and end up back with Quill. And I think that was so good because there's just something really good about that to say like, I don't know you and there's no way that I can. There's no way that I can have this same relationship to you that you had with this other version of me. That's just not going to happen. But I accept what happened, and I still am grateful to you all.
Yes. For
how you took care of me, even though I did not experience that, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's healing in its own, And I don't know. I'm sure if I think about it longer, there's like a real life.
And she's recognizing the role that she is playing in allowing them to properly heal and properly grieve in a healthier way, even if she cannot fully relate to what exactly they're going through because she didn't particularly experience it. But she's like, I can see that I can play a significant role in helping you all heal. And I'm going to allow myself to participate in that process. I thought was a very selfless act for her. I thought about that. And the place that I went to is that sometimes it can feel like Marvel doesn't know how to land consequences well. But what they handle, I was afraid that James Gunn was going to fall into that trap where, yeah, Gamora dies in Infinity War, but then we immediately get her back in this one. And then it's just like, well, the band's back together again. And it would have felt like it would have undone everything that happened in Infinity War. The seriousness, the severity of Thanos, where he was able to do that, it would have deteriorated or made me see him less intimidating. Quill's consequence in losing his cool, well, he would have just gotten her back. So then, there's all of that. And so I appreciate that they still found a way for us to say, like, yeah, she's still around, but it won't work. We can't go back.
Yeah.
And that is what I really appreciated, the way they handled her character. And they had been telling us that throughout this whole movie. And it's very tempting to think at some point she'll just kind of fall in, because that's kind of the trope that kind of happens.
She never even joins a group hug. Even at that last one at the end, she didn't.
Right.
She admired from afar, and she smiled to herself, and she walked away. She said, this still isn't, these aren't my people.
Right. You know what this sort of reminded me of? This is a bit of a tangent. I don't know if anyone remembers the show Chuck on NBC.
I didn't watch it.
But I was like a huge fan of that. So, he gets like a computer installed into his brain, and then he's like super intelligent now.
That show's about.
Mm-hmm. And he has like all of these secret stuff, but like the thing that gets embedded in his brain, like he can do like martial arts stuff. Like he essentially becomes a spy because the computer's in his brain. Long story short, we get to the end of the show.
Wait, what if I'm gonna watch it?
You're not gonna watch it.
This is gonna make me want to watch it.
I don't know. You might like it because it's actually pretty good. But do you not want me to say it then? I won't say it then.
Okay, don't say it.
No, I won't say it.
Okay, don't say it.
But it reminded me of that where I won't say anymore.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No. You're fine. You're fine.
Okay.
I would prefer you watch it because it's one of my favorite shows ever.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, y'all. I don't give a damn. This is more important. But yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about this, and I feel like Marvel has done a pretty good job of exploring the consequences of Infinity War. And they didn't have to, because the way that they did Endgame, they could have just been like, well, everybody snap back.
We're good.
We're good to go.
Yeah.
But pretty much every project that they've had since then has picked up with the consequences and the trauma that all these people have been left with in the aftermath, right? Like did No Way Home? Well,
no.
Far From Home picked up with that, and then No Way Home continued it.
WandaVision. Hawkeye. Because remember, she snaps back, and then you remember Elena snaps back.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Just Thor, like all
Even Eternals to some degree, yeah.
It's all sort of, they don't try to pretend like it didn't happen. Like they pick back up and they acknowledge, like, because of what these people have been through, they're not going to be the same.
Yeah.
And I respect that. And I think that is good storytelling.
One last thing. So I do want to get an idea of, now that this story has sort of ended, with Guardians of the Galaxy ending, what would you say are your top 3 MCU trilogies? So to just jog your memory, there's a few here. I don't think I'm forgetting any of them, but there's Captain America, there's Spider-Man, there's Thor, there's Iron Man, there's Ant-Man, and there's Guardians. All of these have 3 movies already. None of them else. Everyone else has maybe like 2, like Doctor Strange,
Captain America, Spider-Man,
Thor.
No, I'm telling you my top 3.
Oh, you have to say a little bit more.
Oh, Captain America, Spider-Man, and I think I'm putting Guardians. I think I
in that order.
Yeah, I don't. Man, it sucks because I feel like I in the past would have tried to put Thor, but if I'm talking about, As I mean, Love and Thunder just kind of feel like dropped the ball a little bit.
Well, that's the fourth one, but if you were to look
yeah,
at the first three, I
it
guess
still did. I like the. It's like Ragnarok was really good.
that's kind of it.
So
Right?
that's why I would have put it there. But I think
Yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy had a more consistent run than them. So I think I'd say those three: Spider-Man, Captain America, and Guardians of the Galaxy.
I don't think it's this. I hope this. Nah, this might be a bit of a hot take, but I think Guardians of the Galaxy is the most consistent trilogy in the MCU.
Oh yeah, I think so because the tone is very consistent.
The quality
The
is also
quality is consistent.
right.
I mean, I don't know. People don't talk about the second movie that much.
Maybe,
I
but
feel like Captain America probably has the most solid of like all of these movies are quite good.
people don't talk about the first one the way they don't talk about Guardians 2, though.
They don't. That's true, but it's still that movie is still a solid start. It was a solid start to that franchise.
Okay, so it kind of sounds like we're saying it comes down to these two with Captain America and Guardians.
Yeah, I guess so. Although I mean, I love Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, I don't know why people are hating on those because I actually thought all three were really good.
Yeah, I think people hate because it's like the stakes felt so like the stakes in the first Spider-Man were super low. They were super low.
Both of them were super low.
I think they were less low in the second one.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, we're agreeing.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
The second one, I feel like there was. I mean, you can't say the stakes were low in that one because that is what kind of leads to the stakes in the third one.
Oh, you're right.
Like
At
his
the
whole
end.
identity being revealed to the world and stuff.
That's true. Yeah, Iron Mans aren't bad, but I think
they're not that memorable to me.
that's a good way of saying it. They're not bad, but they're not memorable.
Yeah,
think
I mean,
that's
I know
the
the
way to
first one is like. I mean, it started the whole thing, so like a lot of people.
Let me
love
tell you, that first one ages very well. It is very good. I know it's not your it's not your vibe, but it's very good.
I rewatched it when we rewatched all of them. It's good.
I don't like the tone you just said that with.
I don't think it ages that well because I think some of the things, not in terms of the quality, but I think the content doesn't age well. Like I think some of the jokes don't
He
age
made
well.
a transphobic joke.
Yeah, some of the jokes don't age well, and like it's racist.
Oh yeah, you're right.
The premise is like racist.
They did sort of rectify that with Shang-Chi. The 10 rings in Iron Man were pretty racist.
Yes.
And then they sort of healed their wound with Shang-Chi and how they handled it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do want to talk a little bit about the writer's strike.
Oh, I saw a thread and I'm not scared anymore. Because everybody's been saying like, yeah, when the writer's strike happened the last time, 2007, all of our shows turned to shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a thread from a writer who was in writing rooms at the time, but also reported on the writer's strike. And they broke it down and they were like, you guys, that's not true. They were like, some of the strongest seasons of a lot of these shows happened right around or right after the writer's strike. Some shows went on pause and came back really strong
They talked
afterwards.
about The Office.
Yeah.
Some
Some shows, I can't, man, Jay Stubes retweeted it. That's how I found it. She retweeted it. But it made me feel, the person was basically saying like, this idea that like all of your shows are going to suddenly become like really shitty for a while is just not really true.
Well, see, I thought about that, but people, I'm nervous about this writer strike. I'm not going to lie, because they brought up a couple of things that I remember. They brought up Heroes. That first season
They
of
talked about Heroes,
okay.
but that's not what it was.
So it's not because of the writer strike.
No, they discussed that. I'm gonna try to find the thread right now.
Okay. And then they brought up like Quantum of Solace and how they went into, production and post-production without having writers there. I think what worries me is for all of the projects that are complete in their writing, they won't have writers on the set. That's the part that makes me a little nervous, because you look at like House of the Dragon. Mm-hmm. They brought back in George R. R. Martin, and I think it's because HBO knew this was going to happen. They're not going to have showrunners on the set of Rings of Power, which when I saw that on Twitter, I didn't even want to look in the comment section because I knew it was going to be brutal. But
I did look in the comment section.
so
It wasn't that.
people like they'll talk about how, yeah, the script is done, but you rewrite so many things when the actors are there because their cadence might not fully mesh well with their body language, their delivery, and so they might adjust a few things.
And without the writers there.
Right, without the writers on the set, that element might be gone. So maybe people are overreacting and sort of having some revisionist history and sort of what went down.
What is Jay Stoops? Sorry.
But
What is Jay Stoops' Twitter? Okay, so Heroes. This is the most famous The Strike Ruined It show. They said, yes, the strike abbreviated season 2 and famously leaving a character stranded in an alternate timeline. But look at the reviews of season 2 before the strike, and the critics were already complaining about how directionless the show had become. So it took a dive before the strike. So the strike is not the reason why it turned out like that. They talked about Lost. They said it had already been renewed for 3 seasons. 3 final seasons. The strike caused season 4 to lose a couple of those episodes, but then they were added into season 5 and season 6. And season 4 and season 5 are arguably the show's peak, and those are the seasons that were impacted by the strike. Breaking Bad. This is the craziest one. Jesse was supposed to die at the end of the first season.
I heard about this.
This is crazy. But he lived because the strike shortened that season. They saved the show. Jesse dying at the beginning of that show would have sucked.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's more nuance than I think people are letting on.
Yes, but as I think some of the things, like, I think it's kind of a revisionist history a little bit of like people going back and attributing some of the things that happened to the strike. But like not all of it is that. She said like pretty much all half-hour comedies just shut down in the fall, came back in the spring. So you can tell which seasons are the strike seasons because they're a little shorter.
Yeah.
But they're not worse. They said Friday Night Lights, the second season starts in a famously odd way. And the strike allowed the show to shut down and reboot for season 3 and fix those errors.
But what about, I think it'll most likely impact things like Marvel, where they do so many rewrites and reshoots that you kind of need to have some sort of writer on the set. That's where I'm a little nervous about, because there are a lot of times where like the writer and Kevin Feige are in that back room and they're like, yeah, that was kind of ass. We got to do that over. Without having that there, that makes me a little scared, because look at with Blade, they just brought in a new writer, the guy from Lovecraft, and now he can't do anything.
I think if you're smart, you wait.
You have to wait.
I just think
don't ruin it, Marvel,
I just think if you're smart, I think for all of these shows, just wait.
Any final thoughts?
Well, just farewell to another one of the original Marvel characters. I hope one day that I can love the new ones as much as I loved the originals.
It's always going to be hard.
Yeah, man.
Always going to be hard. You're first. That's all it is. All right. You want to close this out?
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Crazy Stupid Podcast. This episode was produced by Adrian Battle Marston. And like every time, it could be sponsored by you. We'll promote your stuff. We want to make money off of this podcast.
Yeah. Although we're just a couple thousand away from TikTok. You need 10,000. Now, they don't
give you that much. But it's a little something.
Yeah, man.
Creator fun.
You get a little Big Mac. We know you always love McDonald's.
I don't get Big Macs. I don't get Big Macs from McDonald's.
But you eat the beef.
I get the spicy deluxe chicken sandwich.
It doesn't matter. Stop eating McDonald's.
No. And listen, the people out there know McDonald's is good.
No, it is. But there are better options for you.
Yes, but they're never as accessible.
What do you mean?
Chick-fil-A's are like so rare. Okay, there's never a Chick-fil-A right around when you need one. When you're driving someplace, there's never going to be a Chick-fil-A on the way.
Right downstairs from my office. So
see, yeah, that's not my life.
But like there's not that one that far from your school.
There is one there, but sometimes that's not where I am.
That's not a valid argument.
Yes, it is. Listen, there is always a McDonald's. Like, no matter where you are, there's a McDonald's 5 minutes away.
Boy. Right.
And I think McDonald's is better than Wendy's.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. Wendy's doesn't sit well at my stomach. But then again, most of these fast foods don't sit. Let me tell you though, I did get this new McFlurry thing at McDonald's, but it's like a strawberry shortcake kind of flavor. Oh my God. Esther, the way I devoured that thing, sometimes we're like, you'll have a milkshake, but you never finish it in one sitting.
Yeah, they're kind of a lot.
That shit was gone in about 10 minutes. I could not stop. It was one of those where I was like, oh, it's not going through the straw. Let me open it and use the spoon. And I looked like an animal.